Who's ready to do this? Scott Stevens here with a look at weather across the states. That's kind of where the activity is a little bit right now. It's terribly dry in South America, and that is impacting their spring planting for crops. So that's probably the headline down there. But some of the other things that have come across on this day is the fact that now we're beginning to have upwards of 200 years worth of records with the thermometer and even longer in some locations. But at least stateside, we've got data that's fairly reasonable. It's pretty good, kind of sparse, say back from 1850 when we're coming out of the previous kind of cool spell. And what's interesting is we can begin to see cycles. We can begin to see other cycles playing out. So, what I want to do is bring that forward. Let's share this screen, see who shows up on this lovely evening. And what we're looking at here is literally a 60-year cycle that shows up peaking in the mid 1870s. We drop back to around 1920, another peak to 1940, drop back at around 1970, and we've been warming since that point in time. And normals, if you're in meteorology, is the preceding 30 years. Like right now, we're at 2020. We're about to readjust the normal, so that'll exist from say 2019 back to 1990. So the previous or the past 30 years inclusive. When I was just starting all this meteorology stuff, it was in the 70s, and the normal period was 1940 to 1970. So that trailing 30 years. And it's interesting that we don't use the longer period. So if, say, a station has been online, say Springfield, Missouri, since 1880, that we don't use that entire data set as the period of normal. We only use the most recent 30 years. So I just thought it was curious that these longer cycles are now beginning to be teased out of the data. And that's kind of exciting to see these other cycles begin to manifest. All right, we had Eta come ashore and do its thing across Florida as it did its dance through the Caribbean, into the Gulf of Mexico, back across Cuba, then hit the Keys, and then just yesterday, come ashore into the Keys. Not terrible, considering how big these guys can get and have been, but nonetheless, it's an event to be contended with, and there's always a cleanup. There's always some kind of a mess that has to be dealt with after the wake of one of these storms, and that was certainly the case today in Clearwater, Florida. However, what swept Eta out to sea was a cold front, and associated with that cold front was a good bit of ice and cold and a whole lot of rain up front. Loves to be seen. Oh, just saying hi to the chatters over here. Weather Weapon Terror loves, yes. And so what you need to do in this Washington state, this is with the next storm that is inbound moving through the Pac Northwest and through the Cascades, is that once the ground is cold and you get a mist coming upon it, then we have that mist depositing and it becomes just this icy, slick, dangerous for those travelers kind of mess. So it seems that every season we have to re-alert everyone to those conditions. All right, there's our Eta. It is moving out to shore a little more quickly. It is, I think it's east or northeast at about 15 miles per hour. So it's a fairly good clip, and it will continue to maintain its identity even as this cool front towards literally its immediate west will continue to sweep it out. Back to the northwest, this is what we're seeing, a forecast of snowfall. This from Weather Nation, but it's a modeled output, and this was from the morning run, the 12Z run. We've got the latest one for you when that comes up, and that is that. No aurora pictures from Finland, Iceland, or anywhere over Scandinavia on this day, but that does not mean it's out, with it far more active than last night, but nevertheless still not terribly intense. But with the magnetic field down, it's something to behold. All right, National Fire Preparedness Level 2. What I am noticing, though, is that today is the 12th. I thought maybe it was the 11th and Veterans Day that it wouldn't be updated, so it hasn't been updated yet again either. So maybe this draws fire season to a close, or they're just not doing their job. I don't know what it is that hasn't been updated, because that's kind of like that's the public portal right there, and it hasn't been updated. Drought Monitor gets updated on Thursdays. So rather than looking at the same old gobbledygook again, let's look at where it has changed from last week. And we can see that Where we're finding the yellow is a 1-class degradation out of 5 classes. So a lot of Texas enjoying some of that warm weather without a whole lot of rainfall, seeing some degradation within the drought conditions across that state, into New Mexico, portions of northern Arizona, and in some of the higher terrains on that really deserty side of California. A little bit of improvement in Montana, where they dealt with snow. Same story from around Pullman, not quite to Wenatchee, Washington, but nonetheless that area. Omaha, Sioux Falls, and north of Des Moines, where they've had a really kind of a dry fall. And then the northeastern states, not a whole lot of change. Those places that are gray, indicating no change, but a drought does exist in their locations. And then here's the let's just go to the current map, and that'll bring it on up right through there. So where we really need to see the precip and the rainfall is pretty much everywhere south of Portland, all the way to Kansas City, and then again into New England. Anything we can do to get the rain coming in there is going to be welcomed by those residents and plants and so forth. Big high, this bloody mess just sitting out there north of Hawaii, in the strong jet stream. And we get these little ripples that come on through. One now is being pushed ashore through the Cascades, the coastal ranges, and that's responsible for the rain that has been falling there. As we look along the larger picture, the continent, the driest air is the orange, and then the yellow is that boundary, that transition until we get into the grays. This is where we can often see the trails from aircraft. Those tend to show up rather nicely in this mid-level water vapor, and we're probably looking at the Pac Northwest and just off the northern coast of Florida for much of those, but otherwise there just isn't a lot going on there. There's Eta as it lifts just offshore, so some gusty winds in and around the Carolinas, reverting back to the drought situation and forecast rainfall over the next 16 days or so. Boy, much of the continent is less than normal, and where we don't see a whole lot of water in those very cold locations up to the north, it's a quarter-inch, half-inch or so at most. And where we do typically in the middle of November get more rainfall, that deficit is somewhat larger from, say, the tri-state area all the way through the Appalachians and then extending into the Texas coast, and even the Pacific Northwest getting some above normal rainfall. And that is probably the biggest thing that they can ask for. Not a whole lot of record heat tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, but by Tuesday and then into Wednesday, we see some of that begin to rebuild. Albuquerque at 69, Needles at 85. So we're seeing that ridge trying to get itself reestablished out west, and that has been the big bugaboo for keeping the rain and the snows at bay. Even though the winter season is young, the water year resets every October 1, but still, let's get this started. Let's get the rain started. 93 at Rio Grande Village, Texas, the warm spot of the country. Copper Basin, Idaho, woke up to 18 below zero. There's that as we move back into the tropics. Movement northeast, 15 knots, 17 miles per hour. 1 knot equals 1 1/7 miles per hour, or at about 1.14 if you wanted to do that conversion. Another area will likely be named probably before we Americans get up tomorrow morning, as its formation chance in the 48 hours is high at 4 out of 5, and then formation through 90 days is 9 and 10 chances. It hasn't moved a lot, just straight below the island of Hispaniola, and Theta continues to work eastbound with sustained winds at around 60 miles an hour. So it's been a fairly potent tropical storm. There it is, working up and really menacing only the North Carolina coastline at this evening, and the path kind of takes it along that way tonight. The center of it actually has had the clouds stripped away. I'll see if I can't right in there. You can see it just off of Savannah, Georgia, and then rolling through not quite Charleston. It's offshore by then, but nonetheless, it's down in this area. You can see that rotation, but the thunderstorms have been stripped out way out ahead of it. So it's got an exposed center, and probably is not going to be something we'll even be talking about outside of insurance claims and cleanup for those folks there. All right, there's the rains in the Pacific Northwest, and more rains and snows through Wisconsin and Michigan and Indiana and Illinois. And then there's the remains of Eta right there. We'll zoom on it a little bit to see the snows falling through the Cascades. Some of that moisture making it across those big mountain peaks and then trying to reform in eastern Washington. But boy, that is one deserty location. It sure gets dry. Those Cascades are just so bloody big. I spent so many years growing up and then working in eastern Idaho. and just so many potential storms, just could not bring their moisture, transport it in from the Pacific, and just cross all these mountain ranges to the time that by the time it got to the Tetons or the Yellowstone area, there just was so little left that, okay, we're going to school tomorrow. We do not get a snow day, even though all the ingredients are there. It just didn't happen. All right, on the hour temperatures, single digits Fahrenheit. Otherwise, it's double digits below 0 Celsius through the Canadian Prairie provinces from Winnipeg, Regina, on up at Edmonton, somewhat warmer as they get those downslopes off those mountains. The cold air is first in, but then also first to vacate. And then 20s, Sheridan, 21, so forth, Casper, Kemmerer, Wyoming. And then you got to get into the warmth. There's still a little bit of humidity. There's still some of that. We'll be able to see that here once we draw in the humidity right through there with the frontal system now definitely offshore, way offshore as the cool air is settled in, kind of resetting those temperatures that have been above normal for day after day after day, giving you glorious, glorious Indian summer weather through New England and the mid-Atlantic states. But now reality has returned. We're a little closer to where it should be this time of year. We've got a storm trying to spin up in Texas. Here's our warm front, the humidity coming back in. The winds are not organized at all. They're calm and you're just kind of scattered in direction. But there is definitely some humidity in place with some north winds spilling through Dumas, Amarillo, not quite down to Lubbock just yet, but it's there. And this high isn't big, but it's cold. It's just definitely cool. So let's look at the forecast. We've got a split flow in the jet stream. Let's look at this area right through here where it comes in unified, comes in like this, and then splits. So all this energy all together, all compact, and then it splits out. It gets weak, and then it comes back together. And that's what we're seeing happen through the west. So the storms, if they come in energized, they just spread out. So they can't concentrate. They can't deliver the rain in an organized fashion. It just boom, gone. Just turns into less than it could have been. So we do have a little troughiness off the California coast, and that has been responsible for this plume, this little streamer of activity right back in through here. That's that little ripple right there. Not that one, right here. But the bulk of the energy is here. So we'll see what happens over the next little while. This wave comes on through, keeping the snows going through the higher elevations and rains at the lower elevations through the northern Rockies. It's a pretty good sized event over the next 3-4 days. And then another one, but look where it's directed, not inland, not to the east. It completely turns around and just gets swung back in on itself. So it just glances the Pacific Northwest coast and then kind of releases its moisture load into southern British Columbia. And then the lower part of the storm rolls ashore and can bring some of these more southerly locations that are so dry. But now we're 10, 11 days out. And that's when the next potential storm for the Southern Rockies shows up is 11 days out. And that's a long time away. That's almost an eternity with these models. They're good, but they're, this is not something you would, I bet you'd take to Vegas. One other thing that begins to look up, like it's coming together, is this, and this would be iota, another Greek letter. This would break the record of, if we haven't already, of 2005's many numerous named storms. I think this would get us to 30, maybe 31, and so that would also be a South or Central America tropical event, and that's about 8 days out. Not even that far. That's less than a week from now. This is next Monday night, so that is in the realm of possibility that it's just that close. All right, let's look at the snows as that comes ashore. This is the precip type where we differentiate between rains and snows. Look at all that coming into Washington, Oregon, down into Northern California. The snow is spread across Idaho through the Central Mountains, good for the Tetons, Yellowstone, the Bitterroots, all the way up into the Flathead Valley in Montana. And then, it comes apart. It falls apart. So we have this great initial presentation, comes ashore like gangbusters, and then it loses its juju and it just falls apart. Now, once we begin to tap some of the moisture coming back from the Gulf of Mexico and this strong 1, 2, 3 pressure line gradient, which isn't too bad, then it fuels the storm. And then that even brings rain, a pretty good distance into northern or into central Ontario. That's pretty far north for this time of year before it eventually all converts off to snow by Sunday and then on into Monday. And then another storm lifting northbound just like the previous one, into British Columbia. There it goes. There it goes. Look at that. And then finally it brings in at least some water. So it's a couple of days. It's literally Thanksgiving before we get some good moisture into the Southwest, if not a day or two before that. All right, guys. One more. I wanted to look at the climate. And that's our drought situation. And so the guys back at the CPC, the Climate Prediction Center, drought development likely in the yellow. So that just extends the drought that's already in place, denoted by the browns. Some improvement should be in the lighter browns, and then into the tans, where we should see some improvement. So it's interesting that the Agenda 21 materials that were brought out talking about a drought, and how the summer of 22, there would be a devastating drought across the breadbasket of North America, a devastating drought, and that would create a massive food crisis for many, many people. So if you can consider the fact, like I have, that we've got this weather modification tech, then that means maybe the plan is set, and just the weather happens on a schedule, that these larger events are pre-planned. So that's something that maybe that this drought of 20 is preparing for, that 21 will not be a whole lot better, and ultimately 22 would be the climax of a widespread drought, is we've kind of beginning at the corners of the nation, and then that might spread almost continent wide. It's just something that we got to consider. All right, guys, I see you there, Success Secrets, and over on the page. And hope you're all having a good night. And loves to be so nice yet mean, while humans overcoming deception industry. That's going to be a challenge. And we will undoubtedly move some of these as we get the live stream options over to numerous platforms. Some of that staking out of territory has already begun. So we'll let you know if that needs to happen. We try to keep it as truthful, but yet not quite using those words that can bring down the hammer and scorecard. That's kind of an interesting set of terms that have come up right now. All right, guys, have a great night. I'll catch you on tomorrow morning early for Vicky's coffee break show. Well, not too early. It's 11 o'clock Mountain. That's in the afternoon for those East Coast folk, and still coffee time for the West Coast. All right, I'll catch you then. In the meantime, thanks for stopping by on YouTube, and I'll catch you tomorrow.